Eagles Commanders, huge game. I've been looking forward to this game for weeks because obviously the story is of this season so far, at least, is the Commanders, one of the big stories, and their fast start at 7-3. But people always ask me, well, are they the favorites to win the East? I'm like, slow up there. I got to see them beat teams or play teams on level or better than them. They looked okay against Steelers last week. They should have won that game. I thought against Pittsburgh. But again, I'm a diehard Eagles hater for years. You're talking about almost 40 years and counting. But it is what it is. You call for what you see, and this Eagles team on paper is, in my opinion, the most talented team in football, probably. And to me, their issues are always internal. Mm-hmm. It's not a talent issue; it's an internal issue. And it seems like right now, in the last 5 weeks, since that bye week, that things are okay now. I mean, do you agree with that?
Since the haircut, yeah. Sirianni shaved his head. Things changed. Yeah, I mean, things are. I think that's kind of one of those things, because you're right. I mean, it's the issues are internal, but I mean, it's kind of the chicken and the egg thing, right? Like, are the issues happening because they're not playing up to where they feel they could, or are they not playing up to where they feel they could because of the issues? They seem to go hand in hand with the Eagles, and a lot of that gets pointed to Sirianni, and he's the head coach. He's the one that has to answer to those things. So I think that's kind of always going to be there. You and I have talked. Philly media is always going to pull something out of nothing if they can. If Pickett had thrown for a touchdown in Dallas when he came in relief, I guarantee WIP would have had a poll. Who should be the Eagles starting quarterback moving forward, Pickett or Hurts? So like
on brand.
That's always going to be a part of it too. That and I don't follow other markets closely enough to know if it's like that. I'm sure New York gets it. The LA market, certainly for basketball, always got it in terms of they find the tiniest thread to pull on, and the Philly market does that. So. But you and I talked before the season, and I've said it. If the injury bug didn't hit the Eagles, and knock on wood, there's a couple weeks where it did, and you saw what happened against Tampa Bay when you're missing your top two receivers, your starting right tackle. I think Goddard was out for half that game too. Like, they're not going to win many games if they're missing those, but they have the arsenal, they have the weapons that on paper they should be able to beat teams, and they're starting to do that a little bit more convincingly. The Jags game, I think, was a bit of an anomaly because of the atrocious fumble that they called a fumble, which clearly wasn't a fumble, but the student of the game says otherwise, so who am I to argue? Love you, Kyle.
Yeah. So, like, obviously he's been a little bit of like under pressure the last, in the last year and going to this year, and certainly the first couple of weeks. What is the vibe now in Philly with Sirianni? Has things tempered down a little bit now since the 5-game winning streak?
I mean, the wins, I think that was always kind of the recipe for what's going to turn that around. You're looking at a season where they started 10-1 and then just absolutely collapsed last year. As much as this season's a new season and there's a lot of changes in personnel, that's still going to be on the minds of a lot of people. So I think, it's Philly, right? Things are good until they're not. So, I think people are still kind of saying that they win in spite of Sirianni. I think that, Sean and I have voiced kind of those frustrations that we still see with him, where I think his issue is he was kind of an out there hire at the time, right? No one really knew much about Sirianni. It was kind of like, Eagles are trying to shake things up. And I think he's always kind of had that, like, it wasn't a well-received hire by the media, and it wasn't a well-received hire by the fan base. There were questions, there were concerns, who are we bringing in to do this? And I think he's always just tried to prove himself. And sometimes he goes beyond what he needs to do to prove himself. He's got to be the smartest guy in the room. He's got to be the one that makes the decisions that, other coaches wouldn't. And we're starting to see it a little bit more now. I mean, look at Dan Campbell in Detroit. I had the same philosophy. You go for the win at all costs, and it's working until it isn't. Dan Campbell was beloved by everyone until that NFC Championship game. And then we started to hear some questions of, why would you do this? Why would you do that? And, the recipe that got him there is the one he stayed with. And that one game it didn't work, and I think Sirianni is kind of the same way.
Which I kind of respect though, because it is the first personality of his team, and some degree, same to Eagles. Like, that's just what the personality is. Like he believes in his squad until the wheels fall off, and I respect that. But you also got to reel that in some degree sometimes, and I guess some of the things I guess some of the behavior things also I think is what.
He definitely rubs people the wrong way, and I see that. I mean, if he was the coach of the Giants or the Cowboys, I would probably be like, "What's with this guy?"
Of course.
But it's hard to score points in the NFL, so I think that's kind of the frustration at times when the points were there for the taking, and he tries to get creative at that point. That's where it's more like, because almost saw it in the Jacksonville game. Despite the calls being what they were, there was multiple times where he left points on the field for seemingly no reason than to just try to get style points. You saw it in the Atlanta game multiple times where they left points, and that one came back to cost them. So if you see 2 or 3 more of those happen, then I think that the voices will get a little bit louder in opposition of Nick.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because that's my next question. So what would be the barometer for Sirianni? Like, he has to get to this point. I'm not sitting here saying right now he's under pressure. I'm sure things are tempered now, but there's an expectation of this Eagles team. They have to get to at least a certain level to sustain your job. I mean, this is arguably the best roster in football, arguably.
For sure.
What would be considered a failure to where the front office would say, may have to let go?
Yeah, I mean, obviously missing the playoffs, that conversation is an easy one. If you have this talented roster, and barring injuries too, I'll throw that in there, because if something were to happen, to one of your key players, then there's not much you can do about that. We've seen teams in spite of that. We saw it happen with the Eagles when Wentz went down and Foles stepped up, but the difference between Carson Wentz and Nick Foles, and the difference between Jalen Hurts and Kenny Pickett is night and day. So if Hurts goes down and he coaches Pickett to the playoffs, then you lock him up for another season or two beyond. But I would say missing the playoffs, I'd say a first round exit. Those are probably the conversations where we're going to see changes be made. If they make it to the NFC Championship game, lose a tight one, I think that we still see him come back next year. If they get blown out, then I think that's a conversation.
So I think circumstances and context, circumstances have to matter there also too. But to your point, I think that definitely that. This Commander seems to scare you, right?
The last few weeks, what I've seen him, and I know there's still the chest injury. He's not at 100%. So if he was, I think that then it would be a little bit more. What we're seeing is concerning, because the Bears game where they actually absolutely broke the Bears' spirit. The Bears were the team in the conversation with the Commanders of like, this is a fun story, and then it just. That Hail Mary happened, and the Bears were like, "Welp, never mind." But, that game, and then you have the Pittsburgh game, and that's a home loss too. I think that we've seen some of the cracks in Washington. The first few weeks when Daniel's just kind of starting out, you don't have a ton of tape and film on him at an NFL level. You know what he did in college, but that's night and day too. So I think teams are starting to figure out a little bit, but at the same time, it's a divisional rival. Washington always plays Philly tough. They were the first loss for the team, a couple years ago with Heineke. So I'm never going to overlook the Commanders, just because that's one of those teams that no matter what the two teams are, where they are, the Eagles and the Commanders always just seem to give each other fits for some reason.
Yeah, the problem is short week. You're asking a lot. Short week. I'm not saying traveling far. It's like 1 hour away, 2 hours away from between these two teams. But short week. You just play a tough Steelers team. It's going to be beat up coming into this week. And
the Eagles starters got to rest for most of the fourth quarter. Then against Dallas, I think that was massive too.
I just think that the writing's on the wall here for Commanders. Like, to me, even if they're competitive this game, I'll take a lot positive from Washington if they're even competitive this game. Because I've really won this game pretty comfortably, honestly. 3.5 points for that field steal. I mean, to
I
me,
wouldn't hate it.
for them to lose this game, it would be internal again. It'd be a Sirianni decision here, and well, that's not good. But I think Philly should win this game comfortably. That's this.
They should.
Um,
it's at the link. I mean, it's something that they should be.
And Jalen Hurts is playing good football. Jalen Hurts has been very clean. With no picks. Maybe one pick.
He had some mistakes against the Cowboys. He threw a pick in the end zone.
Okay,
and then he fumbled as well. I mean, those were the 2 turnovers that he's had in the last 6 games.
Yeah, so. But beyond that, because before that, because before the winning streak, I think he had 1 turnover for like 9 straight games. I think it was.
Like, oh yeah, this is a lot.
It's piling up.
Yeah. He's still would like to see him, throw the ball away a little bit more. I feel like he holds on to the ball too long in the pocket sometimes. But he's making the decision to scramble a little bit more quickly now, which is nice to see. It's just he holds on to it a little bit too long sometimes, and that's where the issues come. But otherwise, you're right. I mean, he started bad against Dallas, but then he really flipped the switch and played fantastic football the rest of the way there.
Yeah, he did. He did definitely. Let's talk Sixers.
Yeah.
We'll start. Ugh.
And that's kind of where what we talked about with the Eagles. If health isn't a factor, you have high hopes for the team. But Joel's played 1 game. PG's played 3. Maxi's missed quite a bit of time. So it's tough for me to really gauge where this team is this early in the season with them starting the way they did. Would have liked to see some of the wins, but when you're missing 2 of your big 3, if not all 3 of them, as was the case as of airing yesterday against Cleveland, that's on a back-to-back. It's just not a recipe for success.
Right.
So, it's tough to say what really is going to be the Sixers season. I think we're probably not going to see the big 3 together until Christmas, unfortunately.
That long?
I think Maxi's out 3 to 5 weeks. So
that long?
Yeah. Oof. That's what I'd heard.
And this is what I was afraid of.
Yeah.
I was saying to myself when we did the preview with Zack and Chris, I had the under on the Eagles, on the Sixers, because I just don't know if those 3 guys will play enough games together to get them to 51+ wins.
Right.
Now, are they a playoff team? Yeah, they'll get there because I think
they can at least get to the 10 spot and make the play in.
Yeah. Look, Matt, if you told me right now in the middle of November that the Bucks will be 3-8 and the Sixers will be 2-8 right now, currently, I would have said, get the fuck out of here. That's not gonna happen. But right here,
I think the Bucks is a little bit more puzzling to me because they're
healthy.
They're healthy, yeah. I mean, well, Middleton's missed some time, right?
Middleton's always missing time. You got to make that in. Always, he's always missed time. That's. But the thing is, though,
but they also have Doc Rivers.
That's true. That's very true. You know about that. But the thing is, the reason why I wouldn't worry about these 2 teams long term, and specifically Philadelphia, is that look, you have like teams like so the Nets are 5-6. Cool story. They'll get out of there at some point. Detroit's 5-7, Atlanta 5-7, Chicago 4-7. Those teams at some point will start to become their true selves, which will allow Milwaukee and Philadelphia to rise.
Right. You look at those teams. You look at like Washington. Right. They're going to falter. Charlotte as well.
Charlotte as well. So the question is going to be now: can you avoid the play-in? Because you don't want to be playing the play-in like last year. Like when you lost Embiid, Embiid went from being literally the MVP leader last year, and the Sixers I think would have 1 or 2 seed in the East to then falling apart, and Embiid gets back, and you guys make the play-in just because Embiid got back. So you don't want to fall off the wagon. I think Philadelphia will be fine overall.
Mm-hmm.
Something to watch going forward, but yeah, it's a bad start though. It's a bad start.
It is. Yeah, it's less than ideal for sure. I think there was a lot of hype going into this season just because you have the big 3 now. I liked what I've seen out of some of the bench pieces though in this absence. We get to kind of get a feel. Jared McCain's looking like a bona fide star for him so far. Might be one of those nice surprises that you got in the draft. I know there was a lot of question marks around taking him, but he's starting to shoot like we thought he would, like he did at Duke. So that's encouraging to see.
I want to talk to you about Joel Embiid, but before we do that, I want to play a clip of last night's Inside the NBA, which Shaq made some really sharp comments about Embiid.
Sure.
Check it out. Play here.
I say this respectfully. Joel Embiid will never win a championship until he gets his mind and his attitude right. You can never come out and say I'm not playing it back to back. That's
8 points all from the strut.
All right, your thoughts, buddy.
So I mean that quote gets brought up a lot. The back-to-back thing, and I for the life of me, Jay, I've looked tirelessly to find the full quote, and I cannot find it. And we know how words can get twisted.
Context matters, obviously, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I don't know what the question was that was asked to him. I know he said, ideally, I wouldn't play back-to-backs, or I would never play back-to-backs again when asked about, how to make yourself a long-term fixture. But I mean, it's nothing new. That's more so what confuses me is that, the Stars not playing back-to-backs, this isn't the first time that's happened.
Yeah.
And I'm just genuinely curious why, when Philly does it, that's when it's the issue. Like, take the process, for instance. It was an issue for everyone, but no one has said a word about what Oklahoma City did. No one has said a word about what Utah is doing now, what Houston did. I mean, all the framework for the process is similar to what those franchises did or are doing. And I mean, you see how it worked out for Oklahoma City, and there was no Colangelos being forced on the franchise or anything like that. Just kind of got stuck with it. So, I don't know. It's tough to really say too much about it just because I don't know the full context of the quote, but I admit the optics aren't great for that.
Let's catch up here real quick. No, I think I don't know if there's a heel turn going in Philadelphia with pertaining to Embiid, but there's a sense of frustration, I think, because of the fact that he misses a lot of games. He started his career missing the first 2 years of basketball, so I get the frustration to some degree, and you see that comment also too on top of that. I gotta be honest with you, like it is frustrating as a fan, as a basketball fan, to see that. Because then because I don't know if he's number one, I don't know if he's trolling or not. But then he said last night he's kind of trolling and all that. But then you wonder, okay, so are you ready to be the next? Are you focused to be on a championship guy? Are you focused on being, just the sense of like him feeling? I don't know if entitled's the right word, but there's a frustration there. I sense with a lot of fans, even Philadelphia fans, with him that. Sure. He's just not focused enough, I guess. I don't know, man. I love the guy. I think the guy is great. Yeah, I think he's a phenomenal player. I have said he is probably the most pure talented center I've ever seen play basketball.
Yeah.
But something's just
I get it. I mean, he's played through multiple injuries in the playoffs. Like, it's hard for me to discount that. I also know that there's just kind of that whole get off my lawn vibe with a lot of the former players. Like,
this is true.
I feel like Chuck and Shaq and PP, like they talk more shit than they give praise, and for whatever reason, if it's because people talk about this era of basketball in a more romantic way than they do in their era of basketball, to kind of knock that down a few pegs. Whatever the reason may be, that I always kind of take that with a grain of salt, because I can't remember. Like Shaq and Charles, like they switch gears on Joel constantly.
Yeah.
One week they give him high praise, best basketball player ever. Next week they're like, this guy's just body language is poor. He's never going to win. He's not a leader. Like it's night and day with them. But I do understand the criticism. I think it's valid. I just don't know what else he's supposed to do, because he's always hurt. Okay, well, now I'm going to try to take better care of myself. And part of that is this conditioning, not playing back-to-backs. Oh, well, now he's lazy. So, what's the guy supposed to do?
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I think the fear, too, also is that he's, 29 years old?
Yes. Well, I think he just turned 30.
Right.
Maybe. Yeah.
Here's the worry here too. Also, and I think Giannis also fits this category too, to some degree, but more so Embiid because of the injuries. His championship window is very small.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
because when you talk about the injuries and stuff and his style of play, he might have no more than a 2-year window as a top guy to get a title. And you look at the rest of the Eastern Conference, for example, Boston's not going to suck for a while. I mean, hate to say it, they're going to be good for a long time. You know, let's get this Cleveland thing. Let's wait a little while see this thing goes with Cleveland. New York, we'll see.
It's a fun
it is fun, but I'm still.
New York's going to be good for a while because the NBA needs New York to be good for a while.
Of course, yeah. So Philadelphia's now dealing with the Sixers had a chance a year or two to really get not even say win a title, but at least get themselves into the top four, Final Four. And every time they had a chance to get into that conversation, they never happened.
Right.
And now teams in the East are starting to rise up now. The West obviously be tough no matter why you slice it. So the amount of there's a lot more friction now around them than there has been in the Embiid era. And I feel like at this point, barring him staying healthy and PG and Maxey, I mean, right now just figure it out as a threesome. I don't know if I see them getting to the conference finals anytime soon, unless they get a break or two. I just don't see it at this point because of the injuries, the environment, and it's all the things around them. It's getting harder. It really is. I hate to say it.
No, yeah. I mean, the window for any championship team is small.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think that this is the kind of their best chance at it, and the core they have there is there for the next 4 years at least. So, I think that this year is not off to a great start, but we'll see how the rest of the season plays out when health kind of isn't a factor, hopefully. But if not, I mean, you have to run it back next year.
Maybe we should bring back Ben Simmons.
I mean, I campaigned for that early on. I honestly did.
You did?
I did, yeah. For Ben Simmons, to me, as a even a backup 4, that's Ben Simmons that I would want on the 76ers. You don't need him to shoot. You don't need him to do anything but facilitate and play the dunker spot and play lights out defense. If there's not a pressure on him to build an outside form, then I don't think that he would struggle like he did. But that was before the season started. And then the season started, and man, it's almost sad to watch him play these days because he used to be so much fun. Like his rookie season, when he was rookie of the year, LeBron was saying this is going to be the next me.
I was saying that.
That drop off is it's just wild. And I don't know what it is, honestly. I don't does he just not really care about the game? He never really gave the vibes that he loved the sport.
You know what's funny though too about that is that we were here. I know I was hearing that rhetoric way back from even up to his rookie year,
college.
Yeah, that he doesn't really care about basketball. Yeah. He's just doing it because for the money and just because of the fame. And we were hearing that all way back when. And then first couple of years, okay, he's really good, but it's another level. And then everything played the way he did, and it's a sad story.
That next step, yeah.
I
mean, it's great because he was that good without seemingly caring about the sport. Can you imagine how good he would have been if he cared? And again, not to say that he doesn't, but it does. He doesn't give the impression that he does.
So if you're still on the Ben Simmons train, you can get him for cheap probably next year.
Probably, yeah.
He is a free agent.
I'm all about the Philly retreads. I wouldn't mind seeing Markelle back in a backup guard position for the team. And I wouldn't mind seeing Simmons back in the right position for the team. Vet minimum, Ben Simmons next year.
Yeah.
Backup 4.
That's all he's worth at this point, really.
Yeah. Why not?
It couldn't hurt. I mean, at this point, given the big salaries right now already on the team anyway, that's all he probably could afford. Right. So I'm all for it. But man, he may be out of the league this year, though, to be honest with you. I really can see that. He could either be on the Sixers playing on a vet minimum or out of the league.
Just out of the league.
Yeah, out of the league. It's that big a spectrum, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I haven't seen Phillies, man. I didn't talk shit. You know, I didn't talk shit in that series.
I know you didn't.
I probably should have, though.
You should have.
Knowing how hard you are? Yeah.
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 Definitely should have. You definitely could have.
Yeah.
I mean, they ran into the same thing that was the issue last year. And that was always my critique of the Phillies is, you go to the World Series run that they had. That team was, I mean, they were still hitting home runs, but they were playing smart baseball. And that's why they got as far as they did. These past 2 seasons, like it's when they get down by a run, it's like every single person's mindset is, I got to hit a home run when I go up. And that's not a recipe for success.
Right.
And the bullpen, I mean, one of the strongest bullpens all season just kind of collapsed there in the postseason, which was more concerning. And obviously what led to the demise more so than the offense, because the starting pitching kept the Phillies in the game.
Sure did.
Every game.
Wheeler was dealing.
Wheeler was phenomenal. It's a shame that they didn't give him more run support in that game, which was basically a bullpen game for the Mets. I mean, it was, but that was kind of that thing, they saw, we got to score runs, so home run time, and strike out, ground out to the pitcher. Like half the balls didn't leave the infield. So, I mean, they really need to make a change in their hitting coach, I would say, at some point, just to kind of preach patience. But I mean, the roster that they have is one that should be able to win, even without having a 5th starter. I think that, the top 4 in their rotation is good enough to compete with any team in baseball.
Yeah, I was really stunned just how I guess I say how bad the bullpen was. I thought they were the most complete team in baseball outside, even more than the Dodgers, because I feel like that was one team that had every base covered in terms of hitting, in terms of pitching, in terms of just all the things you need to make them a great team. They had the most balance in the National League, at least, and to see them just, I don't want to say melt down, because it was a competitive series for the most part, game to game, but just to see that flip like that, it's like, wow, I was shocked.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there were 4 people in the bullpen that, all season you're like, oh, they're coming in, game's over. And when they won in 2008, that's kind of what we enjoyed. It was Romero, Lidge, Hoffman, Romero, Lidge, and Madsen.
Right.
And like 7, 8, 9, you knew no runs were going to be scored. Like game was over. If the Phillies had the lead in the 7th, the Phillies were winning that game. And that was kind of how it was during the regular season. But then those guys like our Madsen, our Romero, our Lidge, they turned into 2009 Brad Lidge, giving up home runs every other appearance.
So those late 2000s Phillies teams scared me, though. Jimmy Rollins and Ryan Howard.
Yeah, I mean those teams had the offense that knew, like Rollins and Utley could hit home runs, but they understood the assignment was to get on base because Ryan Howard's behind me.
Yeah,
and Pat Burrell's behind him. Like that, the teams now, I feel like as it's constructed, the lineup is just so wonky that it's tough for who do you even put in those spots?
But the thing is, though, they're good enough to win. They're good enough to win a title, because I mean, I just think he ran into a buzzsaw with the Mets. The Mets got hot.
The Mets were the hottest team in baseball for sure.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, you went to a buzzsaw.
It's the one team I didn't want to see. When Alonso hit that home run in the 9th against the Brewers, I was like,
oh my God, yeah.
Shit, here we are. Because I think the Phillies handle the Brewers easily, honestly.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think that's a 4-game series at most. And then the Phillies had the Dodgers number pretty much all year. So kind of a toss-up if they get to that point.
I mean, we got to see what happens obviously in free agency. And I mean, anything can happen with the Mets, especially 2-1. Soto maybe goes there, but right now I still have the Phillies a favorite to win the East. Still,
yeah. Atlanta's kind of always battling injuries. I think last year was the first year that they didn't just overcome the injuries that they got plagued with like every other year that they do. And it's
still in the playoffs anyway, but lost in the first round. But
yeah, sad to see. So yeah, I mean, Atlanta's probably going to be up there. I mean, the Mets had their injuries that they dealt with too.
Yeah.
So I think that the NL East is going to be a fun division these next couple of years here.
Always. Looking forward to